good, everybody? It's your boy Jarod and your girl Gabby. We are back. Episode 46 of the Kicks and Shit Show. Yeah. Rocking it.
I think you're just very proud of yourself on that one. There's no modesty. There's no more modesty anymore.
Nah.
But I don't know if you noticed, I snuck a little ditty in there.
Yeah.
We said the episode at the same time. I think that was a
listen,
nice little harmonization.
It's like we're remixing, right? It's the remix.
Motherfucking remix.
It was funny. I was actually
family show, guys.
I was gonna go. It's the motherfucking. I was gonna that part out, right? You're like, nah.
I'm gonna let you finish. Go ahead, Jarod.
You're like, nah, wait, no, it doesn't matter. It's over now. Gabby, what's going on in those streets?
Well, Jarod, as you know, these streets are very warm, so your girl's in bike shorts out in the streets again.
Ankle weights too, or nah?
I gotta dust those off. We're not quite there yet,
Okay,
so we're still working on. Some of the bodies are made in 2 weeks from now. Isn't that what they say? But I will say, I gotta show my latest cop that I'm super excited about.
Love it.
Because it's Women's Month, y'all.
It is. That's right. Sneakerhead. It ain't about gender. It's about passion. Love it.
You know the vibes, my friend. So,
you know the vibes.
This collab with eBay and Playa Society, straight up flames, because Esther from Playa Society, I mean, she just is super dope. She's a hooper, has her female cross-off athlete campaign. Natural partnership makes sense. And you know what? If it champions women, I'm all for this shit.
Listen.
I love it.
We are champions of women on this podcast. And as you said, this is our last episode in March, Women's History Month. And, we've had some really outstanding guests this month. Really some trailblazing women in the industry who've done some amazing things. And not even this month, because we should be celebrating women every month, not just in March. We've had amazing women from the beginning of our show, from episode 1, right? So, it has been, yes, that includes you. But it's
an honor to be nominated, Jarod.
It's been good though, and I really, our guest today, I can't wait because we're going to really get into a conversation with her about the future of this industry. And, one of my favorite signs is the future is female, right? That poster tag, whatever. And, look, in a society, and, sneakers are just an offshoot of a larger society. In a society that is highly functioning and performing to its best, it is inclusive. That's how it's going to work. It ain't going to work if only one type of person is making decisions, right? So the more we can get ladies involved in this culture, and look, ladies have been involved since day one. It ain't like, oh, we're finding them. They've been here. So I'm really excited that we at KNS are doing our small part to push that forward.
I agree. And you know what, Jarod? I know we talk about this a lot, but I just want to talk about it again. I just love that you're a man of the ladies. And, we appreciate you. We salute you. Jarod for president. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
But on a serious note, we love you and appreciate you. And I don't know, there's something about this week's guest that just gets me excited and nervous. You know me, I'm not somebody who is shy or nervous.
Nope.
Shocking to nobody.
Well, it's because
this
guest is serious. I mean, she's been involved in so many facets of the sneaker industry, from the creative side to the business side to the education piece. I mean, doing it all, content creation. I mean, she does work with Adidas. I mean, so much. And, I think it's important that, again, the people that watch our pod, and maybe some young people out there, I really can't wait for you to listen to our guests. But also, if you're passionate about something, find out about all the different ways in which that thing works, and figure out what is the thing that I'm good at, independent of this business, and how can that skill that I'm good at, how can I do that in this business that I'm really passionate about, right? And how does that work? You can find yourself in something great.
Exist. I think you're so right. And, myself included, because we each have our own journey and story, it's an education of figuring out that, your unique skill set could actually apply to something that you actually really enjoy. If you don't have to crunch numbers if you don't want to, just because that makes sense. But if you love sneakers and want to crunch numbers and you're good at that, there's industries that you can work in ways that you would never know, and you were never taught as a kid. So I think the amount of resources out there now, and the amount of people like today's guest who are education first.
Yep.
I think it's going to be a whole different time. But
Plentiful.
Before we wrap, Jarod, and we bring on our fabulous guest, what's going on in these streets?
Spring has sprung, maybe? I don't know. Kind of.
Are we sprung?
Not quite. Not quite. But we're 2/3 of the way through the NBA season, so that's exciting. It's, by the way, your Knicks. I mean, listen, you're. I told you, playoffs are.
Playoffs.
I mean, listen, you're a 6 seed right now, so be happy. I think this is all. It's all within your grasp. I see the smile. I see the smile.
Not like every day, y'all.
It's all within your grasp. I saw something interesting. Nike had come out and talked about the Jubilee, which we know came out over the holidays last year, and they made $175 million on that release. And if you do the math on
me, no dollars for me. But I'm happy for Nike.
If you do the math on that, it's about 800,000 pairs, give or take. Somewhere in that realm. I thought that was interesting, right? Because we always wonder when releases happen, how many shoes are getting released. And they're never going to tell us that answer, but I just thought it was interesting. And I would imagine for them, of the releases, that 800,000 number is one of the larger numbers they do in terms of amount they put out into the marketplace.
I agree with that. And the 11s that usually come out around holidays typically have a larger release. And, they had to plan enough for Joe West Coast distribution channel. Sorry, guys. I kid. I know it's too soon.
Nope, not too soon. Perfect. Right on time.
Never too soon?
Never too soon. Right on time.
But there usually is an influx of 11s. I mean, I lucked out. I say lucked out loosely on the Bread 11s that came out 2 years ago. It was the easiest L I've ever, or the easiest W I've ever taken. Excuse me. Every other L is very easy. Let's not get it twisted. But that's one thing that I do like about that model that Jordan Brand does. It gives a few of us lucky ones.
Yeah.
Feel like we still have a chance.
So you're saying there's a chance. Well, folks, we are excited. We can't wait. We're going to get our guest on right now. So stay tuned. What's good, everybody? We're back. And Gabby, we are not alone. We are joined by Jazerai Allen-Lord, who is, every time I introduce people, it always starts something like sneakerhead or influencer, but it's like there aren't really enough superlatives and words in the English language to encompass everything you do. You are literally someone who is at the epicenter and the hub of footwear, education, obviously sneakers, female empowerment, business. You do literally everything. So I'm just going to say, superstar, Jazerai Allen-Lord, how are you? And thanks for joining us.
Very humbling for a regular girl from San Diego. But thank you so much. I'm doing well tonight. Super excited to be here with you guys, and especially, of course, no shade, but with Gabby, another woman in sneakers, and a real woman in sneakers, not a girl who plays dress up. So,
I like it.
That means the most. Thank you.
And of course, what's also great about this, Jazz, is that you are our final guest for the month of March, which of course is Women's History Month. And, so much has been talked about recently, but really there have been people pioneering and doing this work for many, many, many years. Where would you, and this is sort of like a large question, but we'll dive in here. What would you say the current state is of women in the sneaker industry?
I think I don't know what word I would use. It's very exciting, but I want to walk away from the word exciting a little bit because it's also super painful for a lot of people. I will say it's a really intriguing time. I think that's a good word for it because there's a lot of action, there's a lot of desire, and there's a lot of change that needs to happen. That can't really happen overnight. So we have seen some really big wins with inclusive sizing, for example. Like I'm super juiced to be able to buy collabs now, where like the first 7 to 10 years I collected sneakers, like that just wasn't available to us. We did not have access if you wore a size 7, men's 7 or below. So being able just to participate, I think there's so many women that are able to participate. But we have so many struggles still. Like, even with having the product created for us, we still can't actually buy it. So there's like that piece of it, like actually having access to purchase. And I think the other side of it is the showing more representations of different types of women. I think we still lack when we think about diversity of thought amongst women, and providing designs that speak to those women.
So, based on what you said there, what I'm going to gauge from you, the vibe I'm getting from you is you are hopeful and optimistic, but you're not throwing a parade and not partying like, yeah, we've arrived. No. The work continues.
The work continues. I am definitely hopeful and optimistic. That's a new feeling, though, that started maybe a month ago. And I'm very curious to see how that conversation travels after March. Oftentimes in February and March, Black people and women, and Black women particularly, you see them everywhere, and then we're invisible for the rest of the year. So it does feel hopeful and exciting, but we've been here before. As somebody that has worked in this area for a long time, we've peaked like this before and plateaued. I think that with the energy of 2020, we really have an opportunity to push past the plateau and see some change.
Yeah, it's interesting. You just mentioned 2020, and obviously what a tumultuous year that was. But for so many people, and I like to look at things like this, in the midst of chaos and disaster is always opportunity, right? Like that is the time when things can actually change. And you mentioned, in terms of you buying collabs and things of that nature, it's a feeling that you've been having, look, it's not, you're doing it now, but it's something you've wanted to do for years. So let's go back to the beginning. When did this all start for you? When did you fall in love with sneakers and this entire community?
Oh, as a young girl, I grew up in skate culture in Southern California. So sneakers was more about function for me, to be able to skate, to be able to ride my bike on the beach, like do all of these things that in the early 80s, because I'm 40 this year. So, in the early 80s, that was very normal for boys to be doing it, but not very celebrated for young girls to be participating in traditional tomboy, quote unquote, behavior. And so, I always felt weird and like an outcast just because of the things I liked, the things I liked to do, the things I liked to watch on TV. Like, it was all very foreign to women, young girls who were around me, because on the other side of it, like, I was a gymnast and a cheerleader, and like there were traditionally feminine, I hate like our connotation of the word feminine, but it's like the traditionally feminine things. I just, the women there didn't vibe with the other side of me, and so I was really like a punky Brewster who loved Chuck Taylors and like superstars, or shell toes as we called them. I came up in like the Puma Clyde era.
Nice.
My b-boy boyfriend in middle school wore Clydes, know, and that's like, or suedes as they call it, however you call them, but that was what I grew up in, and like the 4 elements or 5 elements of hip hop, days was my life. It became a thing, I would say, in high school, and I put my first pair of Jordans on layaway with like my first job in the 11th grade. And then it spiraled from there. I never collected Jordans. I started with Nike SB because I came in, again, through skate culture, but I also was like a really underground hip hop head. I don't even know if people use the term underground today, or like...
We do. We're old enough that we use underground.
So, like underground hip hop. And it was a lot of the underground artists who had SB deals, like MF Doom and De La Soul, like these were the moments I was loving. It was full circle for my lifestyle, like the music that I like, Black artists able to create shoes. I love shoes, and so SB really, and their storytelling, is what kind of tipped me over the edge to collecting everything.
So it really resonates with me when you talk about the sizing issue and just that traditional definition of femininity. Growing up, I always wanted to play ice hockey, and so my mom put me in an ice dancing dress. You can imagine how well that went, especially from what you know of me. It lasted very, very little amount of time. But I think knowing how open culture is today, I mean, how did that really shape things, kind of fighting against the norm at that time and really kind of finding your voice and finding your space through sneakers?
It's funny because when I first started at Kicks on Fire, like, he hired me because he understood way back then that if he had a woman on staff, he would be a differentiator amongst the other media publications. It's wild how true that remains today, like when you look at the climate. And so one of the only reasons I literally still write is because people are out looking for Black women who tell sneaker stories, and there aren't very many, if any, in the culture right now. But back then he was trying to hire a woman. I was a writer. I was writing like pet adoption news and earthquake articles. I was writing for like AOL and The Patch and really traditional news. And I just graduated college. And at that time, we were able to just try things. It wasn't the climate that it is now. Like, there were no branded editorials and sponsored posts. Like, none of that existed back then. It was just like, try shit and let's see what happens. If you want to do a video, now it's a show. It was just kind of throw it out the wall and see if it sticks. And so at a point, the owner of Kicks on Fire had designed the site. So if you click the women's tab, the entire site like switched to just populate like the releases that came in traditional women's sizing and women's releases. Nobody went to that side of the site. Like, I think we were too ahead of the time at that time because I was trying to feature, like, I started Chicks on Fire also, which was like one of the first women in sneaker hashtags. So we would feature women in sneakers and try to feature women who worked in the sneaker industry or were actual collectors. And at that time, the women who were being heroed, they were wearing like their boyfriend's shoes. They were like licking shoes. They were in bathtubs naked with shoes. And so I really wanted to showcase other women like me and find other women like me. And after like 100 girls, I couldn't find anybody. Like, there was a point we had to post Craigslist ads to find women in sneakers. Because, again, this is like wild. Before Instagram, before Twitter. We had forums, so I knew all of my girls on Female Sneaker Fiend. But this was like an in-between time before 2010. And then I would say around 2015, it just bust open. Like, women all of a sudden were everywhere. They were in campaigns. We saw 2 years ago, Jordan start making, major shifts in their budget into women's programming, into women's products. So, the desire, I think, is there now and the awareness. So that's super exciting. But women have been here, to your point, like, they've been around. We oftentimes are the only person in our friend group who is like this. I think there's this misconception of sneaker women today, that like we always had crews of sneaker girls, and that was not the case. Like, we see that today with like 10 girls, and they're all fitted up, like they all got the off-white cord, like all of them, like all of them are dressed down to the socks. That was not how our experience was. We had to leave our city to go find somebody else like us. We had to go on forums. We had to really seek each other out, and shoes were a signifier. So like, if I saw somebody out and they had Jordans on, it's like, okay, I know you're a Jordan head. If I saw them out and they liked SBs, they probably liked Osiris and Etnies and DC and other things too. Or they also probably liked the Jordan 1. You saw somebody out in New Balance, they typically are like trainer kids. They like Asics and Sauconys and like, runners and Air Force and Air Maxes and like these types of shoes. Now today, sneakers are a signifier of wealth. And so we don't find community, right? When we see each other, it's not like, oh, Gabby's at the grocery store. I know what's good with her. She knows what's good with me. Today, it's like, how much money do you have, right? Are you wealthy or not? It's like, it's a weird dynamic to be living in now.
Oh my God, you just gave us so much right there. I want to go back to something about the different types of women that are involved in sneaker culture now, because part of what you do is education, right? Like you talk, and you of course talk to younger people as well. What types of people, women specifically, are you seeing at the younger ages that are involved in sneakers? Are you seeing a cross section and a mix of people who are legit down for the culture and like, no, I know the history of shoes and I want to know the story? Or are you seeing like, you know, young girls who just want to be Instagram famous and they just got shoes and they want to just put them all, as you mentioned, in bathtubs and get likes and all? Like, what are the types of women you're seeing as you're talking to younger girls?
All of them want to be a lady. Like, I would say 70 to 80% of them want to be a lady. They don't understand that they could design footwear or work on color and materials or, you know, work on engineering or compliance or any of these things and not be a lady, like not have to take that road or have that following, or, you know, there's a really big lack of representation for people like me and like people even like Gabby, right? Like people that aren't traditionally talent design partners or talent brand partners. You know, there's 5 or 6 people that work on every single shoe that comes out. Like 4 people worked on my shoe with Reebok. Like I didn't just go into my bedroom and like sketch up and, you know, bust it down with Reebok. It's like, no, many people touched that. And so I would say 90% of the conversations I have with young women are like, what are your transferable skills? What piece of sneaker culture are you really passionate about? Is it the design piece and the product piece? Because that's a really specific lane, you know, like you got to have an industrial design degree, or you need to go to pencil or yellow brick, or, you know, like there's certain steps you need to take to do that. But if you want to be in marketing, like you could be at the brand, you could be at an agency, you could be like, there's so many different things you could do. You want to be in PR? Do you want to be in strategy? Like I tell all young women, they come to me because they think I'm a sneaker designer. And then I tell them I'm a strategist and they're like, what is that? You know, and there's just like a big lack of awareness in the community about how they can be contributors in this space. And so that's where the education part of my work came in, is I do now speak at colleges, VCU and PMC. I've spoken at CSU Long Beach, and I really talk about, you know, what does it look like in practice? Like, if you don't have to, it's not about moving to Portland or Boston. Like, there's so many more opportunities for you in sneaker culture that don't require you to do unboxings on YouTube or, like, you know, have to relocate and sell your soul.
No, I love that. And I think, you know, as someone who works in the PR marketing social media field, I've been in calls and presentations when people have tried to speak to sneaker culture, and it's very apparent the line in the sand of who knows how to speak to it and who doesn't. I mean, I think I was once told, and you'll appreciate this, told that, you know, sneakerheads just love fashion and they've always been at the forefront of fashion, and they are peacocks in their group of friends who are really just nerds obsessed with an inanimate object. And I was like, I have never felt so seen and offended in my entire life. I'm like,
they're new birds, right? Like, because and that's the weirdest thing too. Is like, that's where the excitement is. I've never had so many clients who don't have anything to do with sneaker culture in my inbox. Like, how do we get involved with sneaker culture? Because
hire people who know sneaker culture. There you go, easy.
Exactly, because they see the money that's happening there. Now everybody wants to be attached to that, and I think that's where, I will say, like, a lot of young women are really angry about the status of, you know, the climate right now, that they're not able to buy, that they're priced out, the bots, the resellers, the offerings, there is a lot of anger around that. But they don't understand that they could really be impactful in creating change. Like, that all of these jobs that we're speaking about are like actually turnkeys to change. It's the people that's writing that messaging, right? Like the copywriter, the consumer insights person, the person running the studies and looking for the data. Like, there's so many pieces that we have to be in the pipeline. to see the changes that we want to see. We can't just be mad on Twitter.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Even the tech people, what are the capabilities that brands are doing? And I love seeing some of the changes happening, giving early access to women only and what that looks like. And I know, anyone can be a woman from behind their cell phone. And I think that's one of the problems with the culture. But, seeing that some of this progress has been happening, what do you want to see next?
Inclusive shopping. That's my next big thing I want to tackle. So, I think for a long time, the sneaker industry has looked at inclusive shopping as a petite woman's problem. And when I did my shoe with Reebok, I realized it wasn't just that, it was also an everybody problem, because if I ran the Club C under the women's offering, my older son wasn't going to be able to fit it. So how do I put product in the world that my kids cannot participate in? That opened up a kind of light bulb for me. My youngest son is 14. He hasn't worn GS sizing since the 3rd grade. So who is GS really for? And then I started looking at where we're shopping. So women in sneakers tend to shop men's first. Men are now shopping in the women's department. We're seeing that a lot of men are very interested in women's releases and some women apparel as well. Kids are shopping in men's. So we're not even shopping in our segments. So that's just culturally within the sneaker community. We look at the climate and kind of where Gen Z is going. 64% of Gen Z knows somebody that identifies by a pronoun. Gen Z is they're known as the truth seekers. They are known as radically inclusive. And are we speaking to this generation of consumer who not only has $143 million of purchasing power or something, but it's 13 times that, because the soft impact on their parents is also there on what they're buying. So, we look at that. Are we set up to speak to this community? And it's not just Gen Z that we look at the trans community. We look at the LGBTQAI plus community. We look at the body positive community. We look at all of these pain points. And at the end of the day, I think you guys will agree, right? If it's men's, women's, or kids, if it's dope, period. It doesn't need, you don't need to walk in and see the Jordan 3 on the men's wall, the kids' wall, and the women's wall.
Right.
And silo these experiences.
Yep. No, I totally agree with you. And Jarod and I talk about this all the time. It's challenging. If a women's release is in a neutral color, what makes it a women's release versus a general release, especially when there's extended sizing? Why? I mean, don't get me wrong, I love all the championing for women and having more pairs that are specifically for women, but I agree. I think the way of inclusivity is definitely on the horizon, and I think brands need to do a better job about identifying that it is okay to be genderless instead of it being for a woman or a men's release, because traditionally we go into a store and men had all the dope kicks, but women were still wearing them. So I think it was that same kind of language. It was just much more underground.
Yeah,
that's where brands like Yeezy do well, right? Mm-hmm. We look at the sweatsuits, the monochromatic, it's a very genderless presentation. And you get to choose what you want to do it and do with it and express yourself, in your way.
I think, what's so hard, particularly for the traditional brands, is that the people in the C-suite making decisions, right, still have a mindset and grew up in a world of men's, women's, silos, right, and all of those things. So their brains cannot comprehend what do you mean? It's you ever see someone when they struggle with pronouns, when they have to refer to someone by their pronouns, and I'm like, what's so hard about it? It's not that difficult. But for some people, it's they can't get their mouth to do it. They get so tongue-tied. And when you look at sneakers and the culture, it's so similar, right? They don't, when they come into a room and they're like, all right, cool, it's the same old thing. All right, what's the men's? And it's no. Forget about what's the men's, what's the women's. This is a fucking phenomenal shoe. How do we get on as many people's feet as possible, right? That is the question you're leading with, not, okay, man, and I feel like that's part of the problem. Oh my God, we could talk about this for literally hours on end because it's such a fascinating topic. But I want to talk about Gen Z because you mentioned them and how inclusive they are, and their purchasing power, and they are the future, right? Like at one time when we were in our teens, we were right. That was us, right?
Well, a long time ago,
well,
but yes.
Well, we're now, right? And they're coming behind us. I'm so curious, as Gabby and I had this conversation last week, and we were talking about, the traditional like Jordan brand, right, and Nike, and we are of the belief that Jordan brand and Nike aren't going anywhere, right? Because they're so entrenched in the culture, and they're so synonymous with the culture. But it ties into something, and I know you're familiar with this because you had a Clubhouse conversation about it. Tinker Hatfield, of course, legendary Nike designer, worked on all the so many of the Jordan brand shoes, Air Max, etc. And Kanye West, whose Yeezy shoes. I mean, ask me anybody who is in and doesn't have a pair of Yeezys, and I'm like, you can't find one. Everybody got at least one, right? So.
Well, actually, no. I was gonna say me, but they just sent me.
See, there you go. Everyone's got at least one. In 30 to 40 years, is the relevance of Nike and Jordan brand going to be different vis-a-vis someone like Kanye West and Yeezy?
I think Kanye's Shake, one of my clients and like good family friend, Shake JMJ, he always says, like, every time I get into this argument with him, he says Kanye's story is still being written, right? And I think that it's, for me, I'm always ready to have the conversation of like, is that, I understand like the Yeezy franchise is strong, but like, has he given us 13, Yeezys and like multiple classic iterations of those 13? Like, and I don't, Shake always says his story is still being written, Jazz, like give him time. I don't know what sneaker culture will look like in 30 years. We're seeing right now NFTs in sneaker culture. We're seeing Gucci dropping the first virtual sneaker that you could buy. We're seeing, Aglet, I think the app is, but gamification of buying virtual collections. We're seeing virtual fashion come into play. Like, I have no clue what this culture will look like in 30 years. I do think that hero franchises like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Kanye West, like they will remain strong. I don't know if it will translate in the same way that we see it through product, and at the tier, the price point that we see product now. Kanye always had a big vision to do a world uniform and like be able to create accessibility and wanting to create the access. So if that big vision executes, right, over the next 30 years, Yeezys would almost be like Payless, or they would be like Marshalls. It would be the access would be for everyone, and it would be everywhere. And so would there be a Yeezy as we know it in 30 years? What will footwear be like? I think we also have to think about sustainability and climate change, with footwear being one of the most wasteful industries in the world. And materials. Like I heard that man say at the United Nations that if we don't change things with the environment, in 60 years, there will be no cotton.
Oh.
And so, thinking about that is like, my son even dreamed to be a fashion designer. Is that even a dream of a young kid today? If in reality, 60 years from now, there will be no cotton. Like, we have to be looking at upcycling. We have to be looking at other ways, unique material choices, other ways, and stop with the fast fashion. But it's like, those are the things that really, I think, are going to determine not only what sneaker culture looks like in 30 years, but fashion as a whole.
I love that. And it's so key, right? Like, the reconstructed materials and what different, like, are you using recycled? Like, what are the different ways in which you can use things that already exist that you're not continuously harvesting out of the ground, right? Because the population's only getting bigger, right? It certainly isn't shrinking. And the resources that we have are what they are, right? Like, they're not infinite. It just is what it is. And at some point, there's going to be a reckoning point. And yeah, I mean, that is so fascinating. I'm curious. In that Tinker Hatfield Kanye West discussion, I said to Gabby, odds are old heads like us were like Tinker and young kids were like Kanye, is what I guess the breakdown was. Was that true? Is that about what it was?
It was, and that's again speaking to like the lack of understanding of what is a footwear designer also, because Kanye West had Steven Smith, so like let's not even play, you know, like it's like the conversation really needs to be Tinker Hatfield or Steven Smith, like because you know that's what the reality is if you understand the business of sneakers. But the kids don't understand the business of sneakers. They see, I mean, I'll say in that conversation they said Kanye was a sketch artist at best. And, you know, and I like, it's like I personally think, because this is like how it's kind of personalized for me, right? It's like I'm not a sneaker designer, and I can't make a CAD, but I'm leading, like I have my own shoe that I led direction and design on with a tech designer, and I'm leading special projects for Palladium and leading a design team to do that. So it's like, you know, I don't call myself a designer for that reason, because like I don't CAD. Like I'm not going to ever take the respect of somebody that has that skill set and is able to do that. But I do think that he's more than a sketch artist. I think that Kanye and, you know, I often see myself sitting in a place of like creative director, art director, creative strategist. I think he's a visionary. You know, I definitely would say that. I think that he is an innovator. And it's those ideas that he is concepting and innovating and sketching that somebody else is bringing to fruition in designing.
Invisible producer Hugh, please drop in the Kanye rant with Sway. I am Walt Disney. Please drop that in right here, because that is exactly what we're talking about.
I am Shakespeare in the flesh, Walt Disney.
And I'm not, you know, a lot of people know I'm not the biggest fan of like, you know, what he's done for the culture and to the culture, you know, what the brand does, but you can't knock that man for his genius, right? And I strongly believe that he is an innovator. He's a mover, right? We've seen what he was able to do with Gen Z and what he continues to do with Gen Alpha coming right behind them.
Man, this is like, we're going to have her back again for like a 3-hour like deep dive on, because this is like, I'm like, man, there's a million more things I want to say. But folks, we have to move on, because you know what's coming next. America's favorite segment, Shoe and Tell, presented by Another Lane, the premier digital marketplace for dope kicks. So stay tuned. Awesome. Thanks. What's up, y'all? We are back, and it is time for Shoe and Tell, presented by Another Lane, the premier digital marketplace for dope kicks. Now, you guys have been watching, so you know Jazz just jumped out and said, I love those guys. I mean, because Adina and Chad, you guys know, are the best. You know, we're out here talking about sneaker culture and people who know it and what matters. Anybody knows the culture more than Chad? I mean, and Adina, good Lord. Like, again, you want some knowledge, go there, people. Anotherlane.com, check it out. If you have shoes you want to sell, you want to put your collection up, now you got to get verified first. They're not putting any John or Jane off the street. No. They're going to go through a process to see if you're a real one or not. And if you're not, well, sorry. Nothing we can do for you. But if you're looking for some shoes, you can find them and search and buy. It's a marketplace, and it's awesome. They got so many dope things happening over there. Make sure you guys check that out. Now, Jazz, this is your show, so you do the honors. Take it away.
Okay, so some of my favorite, like, more custom pieces. These, they might be a little dusty, but these are the Alexander John Golden Barbie Reebok 5411s. They're hand-painted. They were created to match her like eye color and kind of her aesthetic that she has. So I got these at an event maybe 4 years ago. I think there's 50 of these. They came in like a big silver makeup case in partnership with Baker Stockholm. And she did like an event around these, but I've never worn these because like they are hand painted. I'm just like, I don't know, like, I mean, they're not like customs where they're painted. They've been treated and stuff, but I don't know. They're like art to me. And one of the very few pairs of like pinkish shoes that I own. But I think it's done really nice. Like, it's, you know, it's really tasteful, and I love the rosy kind of iteration of that.
Love it.
I love those. I was going to say, it's not the traditional pink that is the pink it and shrink it, so I like that too.
These are the Geiger misplaced checks. People always want to see these shoes. I actually, they're so creased up. I wear them all the time. These are like one of my favorite pairs of shoes. I think it reminds me of a different time because when I was at Kicks on Fire, all these guys were starting out. Like Geiger, Alexander John, Mache, JBF, like Shoe Surgeon, and we were constantly posting their work and posting their art, like the customs that they were working on. And so, it was those publications that helped tell their story, like out into the world. And when these dropped, it was really important for John that, because his previous drops, he didn't do them in a 6. And so he was like, I really want to make sure that you have them. So I have the ones. I don't know on the back, but they have a one.
Yeah.
So these are the first ones of this red run that he did. The misplaced checks have different suedes used for the checks. So there's like ostrich, and they're different on both sides. Crocodile, different textured suede, I think elephant. So beautiful. Pebbled leather. He did a custom leather tongue tag.
I like it.
Embossed. It says
Those are fire.
check as well. And then they had a little hanging trophy. Which I love too. And there's 60. So then they have the inner tag. This one's number 1 of 60, made by the shoe surgeon.
Amazing.
Love
so
it.
These are like one of my favorite pairs of shoes. But I'm at 40, like these are a little loud for me now. So I haven't worn them in like maybe a year, but I wear those shoes all the time. This is some stuff I worked on recently. So these I worked on with Under Armour.
Like them.
As part of their custom or creator collabs program, I believe. Jock was also in this campaign. So what they did was they brought together 3 artists on the West Coast with Jock and 3 artists on the East Coast with me. And the artists created a print, and we were like the sneaker experts to help them lay their art onto a silhouette and help them with their colorways. So this one this one's Haisu. Yes, I believe this one was Haisu. So she's an illustrator. Worked with like Dr. Jart, Sephora, like a million. But she does a bunch of like little cute illustrations. And then these ones were with Jen Musari.
Oh, I love those.
I love these too. Jen Musari, she worked with like Away. She does protest signs. She's known for like feminist art and her paint style. So I loved working with both of these women. Like it was an amazing thing to work with women artists and being a more like, again, like that art director with them as they were creating. This is some stuff I worked on with Adidas. So you know how they do like the cultivator drops, like the drops where it's like 1 week with Nike by you or something like that. Okay, so years ago, Adidas used to do that for My Adidas. And basically they would use influencers, which at that time were editors at the media publications. So they would use editors to create the colorways that were going to be on My Adidas before they launched a silhouette. So I worked with Lex on like when the Superstar came to ID, this would be the colorway that you saw, like the sample colorway, and then you would click this and then design from there. So all of these were inspired by female heroines. These ones are Beatrix Kiddo, so they say Kiddo on the side.
Those are cool.
Love that.
So these are the Kill Bill. I wanted them to say Crazy 88, but licensing wouldn't hear it. I really love just strong female heroines. So, the bloody go-go scene was kind of where these came from.
The details are amazing.
Yeah.
Even the red thread on the sole.
Yeah, man.
It's like every detail is accounted for. I love that.
Thank you. And so the second one I did with them was when the ZX Flux came to the ID store, and these ones are Storm.
Yep.
So from the X-Men.
Yep.
So these are her little gold buttons. People wanted me to do silver and white, but I'm not into silver, so I did the gold buttons, like the bronzed buttons on one of her uniforms. And they were just like a really simple, clean silhouette. Like it's two-tone. and then they have Storm written on the back. So I was like playing around with design back then, but it wasn't something that I thought I was super, like ever was going to be something, because again, like even working in media under the Complex umbrella, I didn't know how to become a footwear designer. Like nobody told me that in college. There was no booklet online or a PDF, you know? So like, I just never, I never went forward with it. This is the last one. This one was they ended up doing an art exhibition on Wooster Street with all of these designs. So this is when the photo application for the ZX Flux dropped, where you could take a picture of something and lay it all on your shoes. So this was actually my skateboard. My skateboard was painted, and then I shot my skateboard and then moved the print around on both of the shoes.
That's
so
I
had
that.
Like paint drip and like bullets on them.
Yeah.
On each one, like calligraphy treatment.
I love that. And that green color is amazing.
That is awesome. I love that.
Thank you. And then the last one I did was Nike when they launched the Presto into the ID store. These ones are for She-Ra, the Princess of Power.
Of course.
These are when I first came to New York, and I was calling myself Jazzy Hendrix, so they say Jazz Hendrix on it.
Love it.
Amazing.
A younger version of me.
It's
a
all right.
younger, mild version of me.
All
But
good.
The Presto is like one of my favorite Nike silhouettes of all time. This is what I wore in high school. Like, this was my jam. So it was really exciting to be able to work on that one for the ID store. And then the last piece, so I did not work on this one, but I worked on helping to launch this program, which is the Adidas Seed School. The Adidas Seed School is an education program. Seed is a program, and right now it's partnered with Adidas. And what they do is they create a program for specified groups. The first group was for women of color, the class of 2019, and the class of 2020 was specifically for Black women. It's a 2-year paid internship program, which again is unheard of. You don't have to have any experience, but you just draw a sneaker and go through an application process. And then you go through the 2-year program and you're placed in a job after that 2-year program.
Awesome.
So,
amazing.
You know, I worked with Seed in kind of when they were putting their board together, putting their program together and telling the stories. I am the official Seed storyteller with Adidas, so I tell all the stories that come out about the program, and I helped them in finding some people to help them do their recruiting and their applications. I'm constantly referring young women there because it's such a disruptive program and a disruptive way for the brands to recruit. Particularly think about young women from marginalized communities who are moms. They can't just go to college. They need a paid opportunity. So this is the first Seed shoe that has come. And this was the shoe by class of 2019. And you get like a photo of
I like that.
Oh, I love that.
Who worked on it. Generation 2020. Generation 2020, little information about them. And these are for sale, like at Adidas. And like they could go into the mall and buy their product. And,
I love that.
How amazing is that?
That is incredible.
I would say that's amazing, and I feel like Jarod is going to be emailing you afterwards of where he can buy a pair, because I feel like I could see Jarod rocking those. This is amazing.
Gabby, why you got to be in my head right now and be putting my business out? No, man. Shouts to Adidas for doing something like that, and Jazz. I mean, the work that you're doing. I mean, it's incredible, folks. That was Shoe and Tell, presented by AnotherLane.com. Make sure you check it out. Jazz, this was incredible. We loved having you on. Tell the people where they can find you.
On my agency website, if you want to do business, at truetosize.com. It's a footwear term. We tell stories true to size, making sure the people behind the camera look like the people in front of the camera. If you are looking for me on the social media webs, you can find me on Instagram at nerdlikejazzy, nerd like jazzy, 2 Z's. On Twitter, Jazzy Ray like Raekwon, RAE. And I'm not on TikTok, so you can't find me.
You're not. No, trust me. Jarod's trying to get us there, but
Listen, all I'm saying is that, we might be there, but then that would require us to actually do TikTok videos.
I would say, Jarod, who was doing the work on the
Yes,
TikTok?
exactly right. So that's why I nixed it right there. But folks, as always, thank you for rocking with us. You know where to find us. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. We're part of the Count the Digs family on that bomb podcast feed. So make sure you check us out. We're on YouTube. We are at Kicks and Shit Show on all social media platforms. Not TikTok yet. And we will see you guys next time. Peace.